صلى على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Inshallah, we'll begin with the recitation of the Holy Quran. First up, Brother Hadi will present his recitation of the Quran. Please welcome him with a salawat. على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wal asr. Inna insana lafi khasr. الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Next we have Sister Zainab, and she will present her surah of the Quran as well. Please welcome her with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum everybody. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghairil maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin. Amin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Close up الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وجل فرج أجمعين. Kudafis.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. May Allah increase the tawfiqat and the success of all of the youth and future generation of our community, and may Allah accept their efforts and accept the efforts of their parents. Inshallah, we'll continue with the program with the lecture by our respected scholar, Sheikh Mahdi. Let us welcome him with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة على رسول الله وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه المنتجبين سيما بقية الله في الأرضين عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I want to begin by asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our acts of worship in this blessed month, and inshallah as we approach the final days of the month. You know, for some of us the third of the Layal al-Qadr was last night, for some of us tonight. May Allah inshallah maximize the benefits of these nights and allow us to come to certain realizations that allows us to better serve Him inshallah and make the corrections in our actions in our lives inshallah. We turn again to our reading from letter 31 of Nahj al-Balagha, where Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wassalam is admonishing his son, and we are also the recipients of this admonition, and we are working through some instructions and also hopefully taking notes and preparing for brainstorming on how we can work towards strategies of child rearing, of raising Muslim children in this country, and how we can work together to addressing common concerns. So last night we spoke about this sentence where Imam addresses his son, وَدَعِ الْقَوْلَ فِي مَا لَا تَعْرِفْ والخطاب فيما لم تكلف. So we spoke about how a person needs to be selective in what they speak about, what they engage in, if they have an opinion, when to share it, and if they don't have an informed opinion, when they should choose silence. Last night we spoke about choosing lifestyles, but also in treading certain paths, what we need to be careful of. Imam says, be wary of acting first and asking questions later. Go with an understanding of what your goal is, what you're in pursuit of, and the roadmap that you have to achieve that. In which he says, وَأَمْسِكْ عَنْ تَرِيقِ إِذَا خِفْتَ ضَلَالَتَهُ, and refrain from treading a path if you fear losing your way on it. فَإِنَّ الْكَفَّ عِنْدَ حِيرَةِ الضَّلَالِ خَيْرٌ مِنْ رُكُوبِ الْأَهْوَالِ. For indeed, halting before you are helplessly lost is better than plunging into a path that is filled with terror and with loss. So we made some connections there last night. Again, like I said, there's a lot of utility here. One of the things that came to mind last night is sometimes in the process of a child's development, we of course want to recognize and appreciate that first, taking risks can be a very helpful and constructive way of engendering positive growth for our kids, which means we don't want to restrict them. We want to allow them to engage with the world in ways that allows them to make mistakes and for them to learn from their mistakes. But of course, we want that risk to be controlled. So in this admonition that the Imam has, I think we have to be careful not to discount the utility that taking risks can have. We want to teach our children what type of risks to take. So we may not fully understand a path that we're trading, but there may be certain principles. It can be a checklist that we go through. If there are red flags, then that would be a sign of caution. We walk away from it. But other than that, we should, if we're going to engage, and that is a part of the process of learning, we should welcome that, but as much as we can, allow that to be controlled. Why? Because the Imam says, إِذَا خِفْتَ ضَلَالَتَهُ, the child may be in a position that because they don't fully understand what they're doing, due to a lack of experience, due to a lack of information, they may fear dalala, they may fear loss. But if it's a controlled experiment, if it's a controlled risk and experience, then ultimately there isn't, significant risk of loss, because you have other parties that are observing and can interfere if need be. Right? So think about a training exercise that you have. You're allowing the person to actually engage. But once it comes to a point where you fear, serious harm, you step in and you help them. So that's one of the things I wanted to highlight. It's not just any time we have uncertainty, because life is full of uncertainties. And for younger people, part of their learning and gaining life experience is to embrace these uncertainties and the risks. But for those who are elder, who are there to lend support, the younger that they are, especially, is to create those environments that allows them to maximize their learning while minimizing the actual damage that they may experience. So that's the first thing. The second thing is closely related, being careful. This trial and error system can very easily snowball. From time to time, we hear parents allowing their children to be exposed to certain things that is not in their best interest. Part of it has to do with maybe peer pressure, societal pressures, but sometimes the rationality that's presented is that, well, I want my child to try it. They haven't had that experience, and it's for them to try it and perhaps make their own decision of whether they want to continue, in that type of action, or whether they want to continue in the consumption of a certain experience. Again, that can be very detrimental. So we want to be careful even there. We don't want to, we don't want to rob our children of certain experiences in life that is good for them. But at the same time, we don't want to expose them to anything and everything for the sake of a kind of a balanced, so to speak, or a far-reaching childhood. I think those things are not necessarily helpful. So again, I don't want us to get stuck in certain examples. There's a lot of different things that this applies to, and it's part of the reason why I'm challenged to bring certain examples, because I don't want to circumscribe our focus on what the passage is saying to just those areas. But hopefully we're able to make those connections. Okay, so moving forward, as I promised last night, I'm going to pick up the speed just a little bit tonight. Imam then says, وَأْمُرْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ تَكُنْ مِنْ أَهْلِهِ وَأَنْكَرَ الْمُنْكَرَ بِيَدِكَ وَلِسَانِكَ وَبَايِنْ مَنْ فَعَلَهُ بِجُهْدِكَ وَجَاهِدْ فِي اللَّهِ حَقَّ جِهَادِهِ وَلَا تَأْخُذْكَ فِي اللَّهِ لَوْمَةُ لَائِمٍ. Okay, so I'll read this whole passage together because everything we're going to discuss tonight is very closely related. The Imam says, first, enjoin good, or enjoin others to good, and you shall be among the doers of good. Forbid evil with your hand and your tongue, and distance yourself from its perpetrators with all of your might. Strive in the way of God in a way that is worthy of Him, and do not let people's censure overwhelm you while you struggle and fight for the pleasure of God. Okay. This part right here. Now, as a younger person, that the Imam has already said, kind of the center of your youth is to be found and secured in taqwa, practice of taqwa. Build your heart, and then when you enter into society, don't engage in things that don't have to do with you. Your time is far too valuable for you to engage in things that are not your concern. Or to find the place where you can be of most benefit. So that's the speaking. And then the path that you want to tread a path that is, again, good for you. That doesn't lead to loss, doesn't lead to destruction, doesn't lead to decay of faith. And be able to always check yourself. Now Imam says, when you're in relationship with other people, you as a Muslim are responsible to be an ambassador of good. So you should be a voice of goodness, of virtue in the world. Enjoin others to do good. As a result of that, you shall be a good doer yourself. Now, there are different ways that commentators have understood this statement, and it's a challenge that it presents. How can the enjoining of good make us of the good doers? There's always a kind of a discomfort of potential hypocrisy. If a person wants to enjoin to good, they should be good. And because of that, their enjoining will be sincere and will be effective. But the Imam almost seems like he's organizing things differently here. Enjoin the good. The result of that will be you should be among the doers of good. So one easy way to understand this is that the very fact of enjoining the good and forbidding the evil is an obligation upon the Muslim community, and in reality it's an obligation upon all humankind, because we care for one another, because we are all striving towards a single goal, perhaps in different ways right now, but at the core, this Quranic worldview understands humankind to be created with a common nature and to be in pursuit of a common objective. even though they may mistake it sometimes. So we are responsible to one another because we all are a part of the human, a singular nation. Within the Muslim community specifically now, this is, of course, it's either compounded or intensified. So enjoining the good and forbidding the evil itself is a part of the Islamic obligations that all Muslims have. And like all obligations, either they fall into the category of being obligatory for each and every individual independently, or there's a collective obligation, and if enough people are engaging in it, and it suffices that need, then the obligation is lifted from the rest of society. So al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy 'anil munkar, because of what it asks you to do, and the sentences that follow are really a commentary on that. The very fact that you take initiative, you believe in the ideal of enjoining the good, you yourself will be a good doer. It has nothing to do with your conduct outside of your relationship with this principle. There are plenty of people that may be good in their own actions. They are not oppressive to others. They are kind. They are of high moral virtues, but they may not care for the state of other people, and they will not engage in assisting them, reminding them, criticizing them, censuring them, stopping them. They're apathetic. Here the Imam says, and as the Quran says, that person is missing a certain virtue. And in that respect, they are not a doer of good. So as a younger person, the Imam is already saying, there are those in your age range that don't understand or appreciate the value of being an ambassador of goodness in the world. They're either apathetic, they are not confident, they are distracted, or they're conflicted. We'll speak about some of these because of what the Imam is asking his son to do moving forward. But there's something within them that they are not comfortable with the notion of enjoining good. So the first thing is, don't allow that attitude to develop in yourself, that you don't see it as a responsibility to enjoin the good and be an ambassador of good. The second explanation, which I think most of us probably are thinking in these terms, if you enjoin the good, it brings about a certain responsibility. It brings a moral responsibility, and it brings a religious responsibility. Because the Quran says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لِمَا تَقُولُونَ مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ. Or in censuring past nations, أَتَأْمُرُونَ النَّاسَ بِالْبِرِّ وَتَنْسَوْنَ أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ تَتْلُونَ الْكِتَابَ. In the first ayah, O people who believe, why do you speak on things that you yourself do not act upon? And in the second one, it's saying that you encourage others to do good, but you forget yourselves. While you are readers of the book, you are engaging with a book of guidance that is encouraging you to be practitioners of good. So again, the Imam is saying here, if you engage in the act of enjoining others to do good, it may trigger this sense of responsibility. That if I know already that I am tasked as a Muslim to enjoin others to goodness, if I want that to be effective and not just look at it as a ritual that I have to do because it is a prerequisite to an enjoyable afterlife, then I should think about the consequence, the efficacy of my enjoining good. No one likes to do something that evokes no reaction or no positive effect. Imagine if I was speaking and no one was listening. Well, Allah is listening, the angels are listening. Or if I was speaking to people and people were listening, but I was such a poor speaker and orator that it didn't benefit the people, which may be the case. A person feels terrible if that's true, or even to think in those terms. So naturally, when we do something, if we are cognizant of what we're doing, if we're honest and intentional, then we think, well, how can we do it to maximize its benefits, to do it the best way possible, or at least to a level that is satisfactory. We don't want to do something and it completely defeats the purpose. It's absolutely ineffective. So these are again, this is a hint to think about things that we do in life, that our approach is really just to check something off a list and say, well, I did it, without thinking about what actually it produces. So the Imam says, once you take seriously the fact that you have to enjoin the good because you're a Muslim, then you will be encouraged to better yourself, to resolve a certain conflict that you may have internally about encouraging others to do it while you yourself are not. And this is because the Rawayat also speaks about this. This whole attitude of do as I say, not as I do, the studies show that they're not effective. And especially with younger people that are incredibly perceptive, they pick up on these things. We will lose that trust and authority because we adopt this kind of an attitude. So again, enjoying the good, you shall be among the doers of good. Now, being an ambassador of good may be challenging, but it's doable. On the other side, the Imam says, forbid evil. And your forbidding of evil will happen in different ways, with your hand and your tongue. So the Imam is explicit here. And distance yourself from its perpetrators with all of your might. So we know in Riwayat, speaking about kind of the levels of forbidding evil. And forbidding evil, again, just like enjoining the good, requires a certain moral positioning. If I'm forbidding another person from doing this, it's because I find it objectionable. Or it's religiously objectionable, and I too also agree with that. So the lowest level that a person can forbid the evil is to reject it with their heart. Which means I know that this action is displeasing to God. It is, it's negative, it's destructive, it's harmful. So not only do I not want it for myself, I'd like for it not to be practiced in this other person. I don't want it to be practiced in society. So that's the first. The next level is a person does it with their tongue. You can even say the eyes, the ears, whatever, but with their tongue. That means they verbalize something. They say, this is problematic, or encourages others to, think about what they're doing, why they're doing it, and perhaps assist in some sort of reflection and change. And the highest level, I guess you want to call it, is with the hand, which is not just about taking action, because when you're verbally saying something, you're also taking action. But you're taking a little bit more immediate action. So the Imam is saying, make sure you don't forget with the hand and the tongue. Why? Because again, most people seem to already have that lowest level of finding munkar to be objectionable and to be distasteful. We don't want it for ourselves. We don't want it for our children. And we don't want to observe it. We don't want to be in the presence of it. So the Imam is already taking that for granted. He's not speaking to a son that may be so, morally impoverished that he can't even discern between what is morally and ethically objectionable. For the Imam to say, first of all, you have to, in your heart, you have to make sure you have No, that's clear. But the other two levels are much more difficult because it requires you to now take action and almost, project or display your positioning on things. See, that's much more difficult. Everyone can stay quiet and keep their opinions to themselves. No one will be the wiser, and you're probably not going to you're probably not going to evoke a reaction from someone that potentially can take your time or other resources, or it could create more friction in your life. It's more convenient to just say, God, I don't like this, and I absolve myself of this type of behavior. There's a riwayah from Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam that speaks of three categories of people and their relationship with enjoining the good and forbidding the evil, but specifically forbidding the evil and these stages. And he says, among those who enjoin good and forbid evil is he who rejects evil with his hand, his tongue, and his heart. And again, pronouns here are not important, but so this person has attained all the traits of goodness. So again, the Imam is saying, be a doer of good. Be a good person. The Imam says this person has achieved all the traits of goodness. And among them is he who rejects it with his tongue and his heart, but not his hand. So has the first two levels, but not the last one. He has attained two of the traits of goodness and forsaken one. So there's a recognition of two levels being there. Congratulations. But there's one that's missing. It's not just like because you have two excellent, you lose points if you don't have one. And finally, he says, and among them is he who rejects it with his heart, not his hand and tongue. The Imam says, he has forsaken the two greater of the three traits and laid hold of one. And finally, and among them is he who fails to reject it with his tongue, his heart, and his hand. He is a dead man walking. All good deeds along with the striving for God's sake is but a drop of spittle in the vast ocean compared to enjoining the good and forbidding the evil. So, depending on where we are, again, we require that assessment. But for the younger population, Muslim population living in this country, one of the things we have to make sure we can take for granted and establish is there are certain things that we know to be objectionable, right? There's behavioral norms that a younger person becomes, enculturated within society. And that leads them to build a view of the world that these are normal. Compared to another younger person that understands what is kind of like acceptable, not even ideal, but the standard of living as a Muslim, in how they negotiate their relationships with other people, what things are pleasing to God, what things are displeasing, what things are good for them, what things are bad for them, and why. For that person, they can at least say, yeah, in society we have rudimentary problems when it comes to our behavioral states, our ethical, akhlaqi, spiritual states, however you want to render it. That person says that's not normal. These addictions, these habits are not normal. These relationships are not normal. These activities are not normal. So at least at the heart, they reject it. I don't think it's okay to be in an abusive relationship with a person. I don't think it's okay to value someone just because of the utility that they bring to me immediately. Right? But in society, if that's seen as a behavioral norm, you connect with people so long as they have a benefit for you. And once they don't, you move on to another person, you abandon them. That's not okay. But what does the young person understand as being the base, the standard, like the normal? So if we can take that for granted, and I think in some areas we have to be careful, because as time goes on and these cultures and habits establish themselves and develop roots, it's much harder we have to have conversations about why this is problematic. And again, I hope each of you can think of at least a few examples of what I'm speaking about, as far as everyone, for the most part, being on the same page of what dictates ethical, virtuous practice, acceptable Islamic practice, and what doesn't. Okay. Then the next level comes where the Imam says, not only do you find these objectionable in your heart, but you have to do something about it. And you have to draw a line in the sand. Distance yourself from its perpetrators with all of your might. This is not about don't draw attention to yourself, put your head down so no one. No, this is making a clear and firm decision. And when the time is right, that you announce that. Now, the Imam says, strive for God in a way that is worthy of Him. Again, Imam says, you're going to do Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahi anil Munkar, you're going to enjoin the good and forbid the evil. It's going to be a struggle. So struggle in the way of God in a way that's worthy. I don't want to just say that this translates into go big or go home. I don't think we should take kind of all or nothing approaches. I suffer from that. I have very much I have an all or nothing approach. Either I want something to be done perfectly, or I become completely disillusioned, disenchanted, and I just abandon it at some point. It's not right. We spoke about that yesterday. Perfectionism can be very destructive. But at the same time, don't take it lightly what you're being tasked to do, because it requires you to fully understand and then fully commit. And once you've committed to a task like that, an approach to life like that, then you have to be up kind of for the challenge. So strive in the way of God, strive in the way of goodness, strive in the way of virtue, in a way that's worthy of it. Right? Which means if you know something that needs to be done, take that seriously. Let's think of all the crises we have in the world right now. We have economic crises, we have environmental crises, we have political crises, we have all sorts of different things. Remember the Imam said, go and see the tribulations, the outcomes of past nations, learn their histories, walk in their place. The Imam is saying, when you have exposure to those things, then you really get what this is all about. And then you understand why for you to strive in the path of God is central to your meaning in life and to being satisfied. And finally, then the Imam says, don't let people's censure overwhelm you while you struggle and fight for the pleasure of God. What will always be alongside your attempts to affect change in society are those people, not just the naysayers. There are people who will actively be trying to sabotage your efforts, either because they themselves are, they are not good people. They have, unfortunately, they've developed within themselves an affiliation with evil, and they want to see evil prevail, or because they have something to gain in the current state of affairs. And when you try to affect change, it jeopardizes their agendas, their assets. It messes things up, so that they will begin to actively oppose you, and they will begin to attack you from every direction. So that censure will come for sure. Doing good is not just about expecting and receiving applaud and recognition. That may be a part of it. But equally, if not more, there will be people who will be critics. And much of that criticism is not constructive. It is destructive. It is meant to destroy you. It is meant to get you to throw in the towel, abandon things, and say, it's not worth my time. It's not worth the effort. Why am I responsible? Why isn't anyone else doing it? It's to get in your head. It's to demoralize. And I know we're running out of time, so I want to be cognizant of that. I'll pick up on this tomorrow night, inshallah, because we haven't finished this section. But psychological warfare is a very real thing, and it doesn't always have to happen in the context of a military confrontation or political confrontation, meaning between two or multiple nation states. It can be, idea driven, ideologically driven. You want to make a real change when it comes to the environmental health and well-being of the world. There will be people who will come after you and engage in psychological warfare to demoralize you, to discredit you, to just completely destroy every ounce of hope and confidence that you have and support that's given to you. And when they do that, they succeed. So Quran speaks about this. Mu'mineen, those people who fill the shoes of those who are not just weak in faith, but they are uncertain about their commitment to these things. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will replace them with peoples who come that are confident, that are committed, and that they won't be swayed by the censure of the censurer, by the criticism that is leveled by people who their only objective is to try and destroy. So again, I think there's a lot to be said here. Tomorrow, inshallah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish this passage and take a look a little bit about the issue number one of leadership in young people. We need that badly. Not like, we have elders in leadership positions and we should transition the young. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about actually being proactive in, pursuing leadership and aspiring to be leaders in younger people. Why that's really important, what are some of the roadblocks, and why we really need it for the kind of like the advancement or at least the survival of the Muslim experience in this country, in this world, in this time. Second part in the passage that we'll read tomorrow, the Imam says, become learned in the religion. How this is also really important and connected to this acceptance of leadership for younger people. Again, the Imam is not just saying become an alim, become a mujtahid, and then serve in a clerical position. No, that's not what the Imam is saying here at all, because he's advising his son. He's not advising his son, for your career, I want you to become, for example, like a sheikh, a rohani, a cleric, a scholar, what? No. You need to become learned in the religion to serve as a leader and to do these other things. Without it, you're destined for failure. So speaking about that too, the urgency of something like that, and perhaps how we can start, we can continue thinking positively about advancing and enhancing the level of learning within our youth as it pertains to the religion, and maybe shifting some paradigms of what that means exactly. Inshallah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by the right of this night that we learn to strive in His path, and that we live our lives in ways that is pleasing to Allah. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to assist us in the enjoining of good so that we may be the doers of good. Help us to advance, if we haven't already, our forbidding of evil past just the heart, and into the tongue and into the hand, inshallah. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
اللهم إني أفتتح الثناء بحمدك وأنت مسدد للصواب بمنك، وأيقنت أنك أنت أرحم الراحمين في موضع العفو والرحمة، وأشد المعاقبين في موضع النكال والنقمة، وأعظم المتجبرين في موضع الكبرياء والعظمة. اللهم أذنت لي في دعائك ومسألتك، فاسمع يا سميع مدحتي، وأجب يا رحيم دعوتي، وأقل يا غفور عثرتي. فكم يا إلهي من كربة قد فرجتها، وهموم قد كشفتها، وعثرة قد أقلتها، ورحمة قد نشرتها، وحلقة بلاء قد فككتها. الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا، ولم يكن له شريك في الملك، ولم يكن له ولي من الذل، وكبره تكبيرا. الحمد لله بجميع محامده كلها، على جميع نعمه كلها. الحمد لله الذي لا مضاد له في ملكه، ولا منازع له في أمره. الحمد لله الذي لا شريك له في خلقه، ولا شبيه له في عظمته. الحمد لله الفاشي في الخلق أمره وحمده، الظاهر بالكرم مجده، الباسط بالجود يده، الذي لا تنقص خزائنه، ولا تزيده كثرة العطاء إلا جودا وكرما. إنه هو العزيز الوهاب. اللهم إني أسألك قليلا من كثير، مع حاجة بي إليه عظيمة، وغناك عنه قديم، وهو عندي كثير، وهو عليك سهل يسير. اللهم إن عفوك عن ذنبي، وتجاوزك عن خطيئتي، وصفحك عن ظلمي، وسترك على قبيح عملي، وحلمك عن كثير جرمي، عندما كان من خطئي وعمدي. أطمعني في أن أسألك ما لا أستوجبه منك، الذي رزقتني من رحمتك، وأريتني من قدرتك، وعرفتني من إجابتك، فصرت أدعوك آمنا وأسألك مستأنسا، لا خائفا ولا وجلا، مدلا عليك فيما قصدت فيه إليك. فإن أبطأ عني عتبت بجهلي عليك، ولعل الذي أبطأ عني هو خير لي لعلمك بعاقبة الأمور. فلم أر مولا كريما أصبر على عبد لئيم منك علي يا رب. إنك تدعوني فأولي عنك، وتتحبب إلي فأتبغض إليك، وتتودد إلي فلا أقبل منك، كأن لي التطول عليك، فلم يمنعك ذلك من الرحمة لي والإحسان إلي والتفضل علي بجودك وكرمك. فارحم عبدك الجاهل وجد عليه بفضل إحسانك، إنك جواد كريم. الحمد لله مالك الملك مجري الفلك مسخر الرياح فالق الإصباح ديان الدين رب العالمين. الحمد لله على حلمه بعد علمه، والحمد لله على عفوه بعد قدرته، والحمد لله على طول أناته في غضبه، وهو قادر على ما يريد. الحمد لله خالق الخلق باسط الرزق فالق الإصباح ذي الجلال والإكرام والفضل والإنعام، الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى، تبارك وتعالى. الحمد لله الذي ليس له منازع يعادله ولا شبيه يشاكله ولا ظهير يعاضده. قهر بعزته الأعزاء وتواضع لعظمته العظماء، فبلغ بقدرته ما يشاء. الحمد لله الذي يجيبني حين أناديه ويستر علي كل عورة وأنا أعصيه، ويعظم النعمة علي فلا أجازي. فكم من موهبة هنيئة قد أعطاني، وعظيمة مخوفة قد كفاني، وبهجة مونقة قد أراني. فأثني عليه حامدا وأذكره مسبحا. الحمد لله الذي لا يهتك حجابه ولا يغلق بابه ولا يرد سائله ولا يخيب آمله. الحمد لله الذي يؤمن الخائفين وينجي الصالحين ويرفع المستضعفين ويضع المستكبرين ويهلك ملوكا ويستخلف آخرين. والحمد لله قاصم الجبارين مبير الظالمين مدرك الهاربين نكال الظالمين صريخ المستصرخين موضع حاجات الطالبين معتمد المؤمنين الحمد لله الذي من خشيته ترعد السماء وسكانها وترجف الأرض وعمارها وتموج البحار ومن يسبح في غمراتها الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله الحمد لله الذي يخلق ولم يخلق ويرزق ولا يرزق ويطعم ولا يطعم ويميت الأحياء ويحيي الموتى وهو حي لا يموت بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وأمينك وصفيك وحبيبك وخيرتك من خلقك وحافظ سرك ومبلغ رسالاتك أفضل وأحسن وأجمل وأكمل وأزكى وأنمى وأطيب وأطهر وأسنى وأكثر ما صليت وباركت وترحمت وتحننت وسلمت على أحد من عبادك وأنبيائك ورسلك وصفوتك وأهل الكرامة عليك من خلقك اللهم وصل على علي أمير المؤمنين ووصي رسول رب العالمين عبدك ووليك وأخي رسولك وحجتك على خلقك وآيتك الكبرى والنبأ العظيم وصل على الصديقة الطاهرة فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين وصل على صبطي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة وصل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك صلاة كثيرة دائمة اللهم وصل على ولي أمرك القائم المؤمل والعدل المنتظر وحفه بملائكتك المقربين وأيده بروح القدس يا رب العالمين اللهم اجعله الداعي إلى كتابك والقائم بدينك استخلفه في الأرض كما استخلفت الذين من قبله مكن له دينه الذي ارتضيته له أبدله من بعد خوفه أمنا يعبدك لا يشرك بك شيئا اللهم أعزه وأعزز به وانصره وانتصر به وانصره نصرا عزيزا وافتح له فتحا يسيرا واجعل له من لدنك سلطانا نصيرا. اللهم أظهر به دينك وسنة نبيك حتى لا يستخفي بشيء من الحق مخافة أحد من الخلق. اللهم إنا نرغب إليك في دولة كريمة تعز بها الإسلام وأهله وتذل بها النفاق وأهله، وتجعلنا فيها من الدعاة إلى طاعتك والقادة إلى سبيلك، وترزقنا بها كرامة الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم ما عرفتنا من الحق فحملناه وما قصرنا عنه فبلغناه. اللهم المم به شعثنا واشعب به صدعنا وارتق به فتقنا وكثر به قلتنا وأعزز به ذلتنا وأغن به عائلنا واقض به عن مغرمنا واجبر به فقرنا وسد به خلتنا ويسر به عسرنا وبيض به وجوهنا وفك به أسرنا وأنجح به طلبتنا وأنجز به مواعيدنا واستجب به دعوتنا وأعطنا به سؤلنا وبلغنا به من الدنيا والآخرة آمالنا وأعطنا به فوق رغبتنا يا خير المسؤولين وأوسع المعطين. اشف به صدورنا وأذهب به غيظ قلوبنا واهدنا به لما اختلف فيه من الحق بإذنك، إنك تهدي من تشاء إلى صراط مستقيم. وانصرنا به على عدوك وعدونا إله الحق آمين. اللهم إنا نشكو إليك فقد نبينا صلواتك عليه وآله وغيبة ولينا وكثرة عدونا وقلة عددنا وشدة الفتن بنا وتظاهر الزمان علينا. فصل على محمد وآله وأعنا على ذلك بفتح منك تعجله وبضر تكشفه ونصر تعزه وسلطان حق تظهره ورحمة منك تجللناها وعافية منك تلبسناها برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صل على محمد وآله الطاهرين.